Welcome back.
Hello, how are we doing?
How you getting
Not too
on?
bad.
Today we're joined by Lisa Scott. So Lisa, you run a podcast as well.
Yep.
Do you mind telling us a little bit? A little bit about it.
Yeah. So mine, it's a pretty new thing. I've been thinking about doing it for a long time. I'm a therapist in private practice, and I just started seeing so many general themes of things that people were struggling with on a pretty basic human level. And I thought, what's the best way to get this out there to people that want to use it or are looking for help? And here in the States, we have some pretty poor access to mental health care. So I just started taking these broad topics that I thought people might be interested in and making podcast episodes out of them. And I take people's questions and encourage them to email me, and I'll make a podcast episode if that's helpful. But I really just want to deliver things that people can use in their daily lives that they can connect with. And the other thing I was looking at when I was listening to other mental health or self-help podcasts was that a lot of it was like kind of these really deep concepts that we think about in grad school that, yeah, we learn about, but what does that actually mean for people and how do they use it? So I really wanted to make it user friendly and something that people could connect to. And it's just kind of taken off, and it's been pretty cool. So I'm happy to be doing it.
That's awesome.
We're glad you're doing it. We're glad we can get to talk to you today.
Yeah, we are. So how long have you actually been doing the podcast for then?
So I just started in June of this year.
Oh,
A lot of time to think about it when we first got quarantined. And I thought, why not now? So yeah, I just started in June.
Awesome.
yeah, we're the same. We started in like May. It was all
right.
because of quarantine, really, because like Jared put up a tweet and he was just like, "Oh yeah, thinking about starting a podcast. Who's in?" And me and Thomas replied, and like me and Thomas were outside of that. We were kind of thinking about doing one as well, individually, but.
Yeah.
But then Jared put it up, and we were like, "Oh yeah, that's a sign. Like we have
So
to
then
do it
we,
now."
kind of took pity on Jared and brought him in on.
Yeah,
the
we're like,
thing.
"Oh, we feel bad."
Yeah. But now, we've all, we're all like a little family that kind of just like bullies each other
Very
Dysfunctional
dysfunctional.
family.
constantly.
Very.
For
Yes.
everybody, the best.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was I going to say?
We're all kind of here about supporting, talk about mental health. We like talking about it a lot,
Yeah, we had an Irish guy talk about it pretty recently. So good to talk about it again. It's very important.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
It's very, and something that I tell a lot of my clients that get nervous about starting therapy or asking for help is, I know that there's a stigma and it's not always easily accessible, but, like if you fell down and broke your arm and went to the hospital and the doctor said you need a cast, would you say, no, I think I'll go it alone?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I think about it and help is like, you're really, saying, no, I don't need the cast. And it's unfortunate. I know over here in the States, there's a really big stigma and it's really difficult to get access to. So I think the more we can talk about it and normalize that we're all human and life isn't an Instagram highlight reel, that it's okay to have negative emotions. I think that's the greatest gift we can give each other is to understand that we're all human, and I think that that's a concept that seems to be lost more and more these days,
So often people can't go to therapy about it and all that, but they do have their friends. If you know someone who's going through a hard time, like what do you do or what you tell your viewers to do?
So always talk about it or reach out for help. And the first and foremost, I think that in my experience and with my friends in my personal circle, I seem to get this theme like, well, I don't want to feel like a burden or my problems don't matter. And they've got their own stuff that's going on. And the thing of it is that people probably do have their own stuff going on, but if you're open enough to talk about your own stuff, you guys may connect and help each other. And so I always tell people, don't be afraid to talk. You've got to get those things out of your heart and your head for your body and your brain to start processing them. There's always somebody willing to listen. And if you don't have access to a counselor or a therapist, usually I know over here, there are scholarships and grants and there's online programs and there's different things that you can do, but never feel like you have to sit with something alone, because that's a scary place to be. And that's when things start getting really heavy, when you feel like nobody's going to get it. Even if they don't get it, just to have somebody to listen to you, you know, you just can't be afraid to talk, and know that there's nothing wrong with you if you need to talk about something. You're not broken. You're human. And I can't say that enough. You're going to get sick of me saying that, but you're human. We all have stuff, and life isn't easy, you know, and that's okay. But I think we have a sort of this projection of a society where it's like, well, it should be easy, but it's not. It's tough.
Yeah, we all come from unique circumstances, so one person's story won't be another person's story.
Exactly.
Uh, Luckily for us, I have the two lads here. If I ever have a problem, I can talk to these lads, no problem. And the same goes with them. So we're very fortunate in that way.
Yeah, that's been very clear. Like, even like at the start of the podcast, like we even before the podcast, we're all like good friends. But I think, like, you know, spending the last nearly 100 days with these lads has really kind of opened.
It's 99 days today, isn't it?
Yeah, but I said nearly 100.
No, just being sure.
Oh yeah, 90,
this episode's coming out after. This will be episode 101.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations. That's big.
Thank you very much. But yeah, like, just spending that amount of time with the lads, and even like outside of it when we play, like PlayStation and stuff like that, it's been very helpful. Like, because like when you spend a certain amount of time with someone, you start to realize that you're not, like, you're not as different as you.
Oh yeah.
You thought. So like, yeah, to them, yeah.
And isn't that what we, I think, all crave on some basic level, is to feel connected and accepted somewhere?
Fuck yeah.
You know, and acceptance is just like, it's one of the greatest gifts, to just know that you can be your authentic self and you found your people. That's what home is. Home isn't a place, it's your people, you know? So.
That's very true, yeah.
No, you got a great point there. So you do this professionally anyway.
Yes.
So what's your exact title?
So I'm a licensed professional counselor and a psychotherapist.
Okay. So obviously this is like a huge part of your life. When someone comes to you, what would be the most common case of what they're going through?
What a loaded question. I think, honestly, what I'm seeing the most of is anxiety. So anxiety and depression seem to be, unfortunately, very common. Although, side note, after quarantine, I'm counseling more couples than I've ever counseled. But yeah.
Wasn't there a thing when Italy where they were like completely locked down? They had like the highest rate of divorce in years.
Yeah, that was a rough patch. As well as that, there was domestic abuse went up so high.
Oh, that,
especially in the UK for some reason. Like, it was so bad.
Yes. Yep.
Horrible, yeah.
Same here. And we're definitely seeing more depression and anxiety surrounding the pandemic. But I think just in general, I've been seeing a lot of young people, late teens, early 20s, with crippling anxiety. And it's, you know, I think a lot of it, I won't ask, but I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm old enough that I grew up without a cell phone. And I think that we underestimate a lot of what social media and being so connected does to our young kids regarding building a self-identity and figuring out how to problem solve things, and that they're okay to make mistakes. And so then they get out on their own and they're so anxious about making a mistake or not being accepted that creeps into their relationships and their professional lives, and they just haven't developed this self-identity or this self-confidence, and it's really a crippling thing that I'm seeing a lot of.
Yeah.
So would you say then, like, that over the last few years, since, like, you know, new technology and all has been introduced, that it's been kind of like higher than it was before?
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. And you know, the rate of suicide is on the rise here. And so I think, anxiety's at an all-time high and coping skills are at an all-time low. I think to kind of sum that up. And a lot of people that I encounter don't really know how to understand or sit with their emotions. And when they have a bad one, they're like, I just want it to go away. I want it to go away. So they self-medicate or they avoid it because they don't know what to do with it. They've never been given the opportunity to really like make a mistake or have a negative emotion. But I can't, stress enough that one thing that I stress with all of my clients, and I've talked about on the podcast, is you've got to learn to have a relationship with both the good stuff and the bad stuff, because they're all windows into understanding you. And until you learn how to have a relationship with the bad stuff, you're going to avoid it and be afraid of it, and it will be crippling.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I think we see a lot more, I've been seeing a lot more parents that we over here call the helicopter parents or the lawnmower parents, where they just do everything for the child because they don't want them to feel failure or to feel something bad.
Yeah.
So then when they're 19, 20, they have no idea what to do with something that doesn't feel good. So it's really a cycle. But yes, I would say in the last few years, people work.
Yeah, well, I agree with what you're saying there, because like obviously, when people can sit with like kind of bad emotions and bad things that happen to them, like you have to think about it in a way where it's like, something good will happen, yeah, and something bad will happen, yeah, but it's all just gonna like make me into a better person.
Yeah. And
it's gonna develop you more.
It's going to develop you. And I also think that, there are really opportunities or windows to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
Why does something make you sad? Why does something piss you off?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And what does that mean for you? Like, so what do you need? Do you need to find a different friend or a different environment so you're not pissed off? And I think sitting with that and trying to understand yourself, we underestimate the importance of really getting to know ourselves. And it's the most important relationship you'll ever have, really.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about self-diagnosis and people also self-medicating. I seen you brought that up a second ago.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start with people self-diagnosing, if you're okay with that.
Sure. You mean when people self-diagnose with like anxiety or depression or yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. So something that I see a lot in men, for example, is sometimes people will just kind of diagnose them as an asshole because they're irritable and angry. But the number one hallmark sign of clinical depression in men is anger and irritability. And when we think about depression, we think not getting out of bed and not eating and being really low. Signs and symptoms present differently in men and women and different age groups as well. So I caution people all the time about Dr. Google or self-diagnosing, because I think there is a lot of misinformation and generalizations out there. And I see young men in here all the time where I had one a couple of weeks ago and he came in and he's angry and irritable and he doesn't know why, and it's going on for weeks, and then he isolates. And I said, well, how long has this been going on? He's like, probably about 10 years. And we got him diagnosed and medicated. And within 3 weeks, he's like, I never even knew the world could look like this. And so, before you diagnose yourself with something, make sure you have all the facts. I hear a lot of people say things like, well, I have a fear of commitment, or I have trust issues, and that's just part of who I am. But I also go back to on that, before you diagnose yourself with that, take a look at who you're surrounding yourself with, right? Are you surrounding yourself with untrustworthy people? Like, we are our own worst critics, and self-diagnosis in this day and age is a really easy thing to get into, but there are always answers, and there's always somebody, hopefully, that can help and at least guide you on a better path, because knowledge is power. And if you're just assuming, you're not giving yourself the chance you need to actually feel better and to live with whatever it is you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 Sure.
I'm processing that. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
going through school, we knew a lot of people who self-diagnose themselves with a lot of things. The lads would agree, would you?
Yep.
I feel like if they had gone to therapy or found any kind of professional help, they would have been way better off.
Yeah.
But sadly, they didn't get to.
Do you ever see that? There's like a Dr. Phil clip of this guy, and I know saying Dr. Phil now, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be extravagant. It is. This guy, he has that thing where he diagnoses himself with different diseases every day.
He was
so,
a Mexican model, wasn't he?
I think he was, George, yeah.
I just seen that episode.
He coughed, and then he went to his mom and said, "Oh, I have lung cancer." But then it'll go away, or he'll sneeze and he's got hypothermia. Like that's probably the extreme of self.
That is.
He also said he was schizophrenic.
That is definitely the extreme.
Yeah.
But what they said to him was that he kept thinking about it so much that he was like at risk of actually getting it.
Yeah.
That's a rough thing.
Yeah, that's the one thing where it's like people try like kind of self-diagnosing even like just diseases on Google. Like you could be like, oh yeah, I have this like itch on my back. What is that? And they're like, oh yeah, you have tumors all over your back. And it's like, what?
Yeah. Well, here's the deal with that. And I love Dr. Phil, and I saw that episode. But Dr. Phil would tell you there's always a payoff for someone's behavior. So, if you're excluding real mental illness or some real pathology of what's going on, what's the payoff for him to keep doing that? Is it attention? But you also have to remember too, like your brain is constantly wired to try to protect you. Yeah. So that's why like people with crippling anxiety or the people that get panic attacks, I always say, you've got to get up and move away from the danger because your brain's looking for danger because it wants to connect those emotional dots and say, how do we protect our person? Mm-hmm. So the more you talk about this stuff and kind of convince yourself that it's happening, your brain's like, thank God we've got something to be afraid of and protect them from. It's really kind of a mind F, for lack of a better term, because it's your brain is like the best thing ever and your worst enemy sometimes, because you really can change your thought patterns to an adverse reaction to where you really believe this stuff is happening and you're living in a delusional reality. Yeah. So yeah, that was an intense one. I remember that he thought he was schizophrenic. Yeah.
Was I right when I said that he was at risk of getting it because of fixating on it?
He did. He said now something about researching it for like 10 hours a day.
Jesus.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's, and that him, that can't be a great existence for him. I wouldn't imagine. But I think that he got himself into this pattern of behavior or this thought process of fear, and it just consumed his life, and that takes some real intensive work to break that pattern and to understand that you are safe and you are okay and to start living a different normal. Yeah. That was an intense one.
Do you think that guy actually recovered? I had a huge debate about it.
Do I think he recovered? I think the better question is, did he want to recover? Because my thing with that show was that, well, look at all the attention he's getting now. Does he really want the help? It's just validating his existence of being a problem. And so I always tell people in therapy, you get out what you put in. And if you're not going to get brutally honest with yourself and really commit to making some changes, you probably won't do better, because I can empower you and support you and inspire you till the cows come home. But unless you're committed to wanting it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And the thing with Dr. Phil now is that so many people abuse the power of him. You have so many people that go on the show to become famous. I remember that one girl now.
Yeah.
And there was also a YouTuber with blue hair.
Thomas, are you about to mention Bad Baby, Catch Me
No,
Outside Girl?
I wasn't going to mention her because I don't like her. I was going to mention the other one. Her mom wasn't going to let her buy a car. And so she phoned Dr. Phil saying, my mom's abusing me. She won't buy me a car. And
Oh, I can't
Dr. Phil
stand
sent her to
people
the
like
ranch, got her back out, thought it was okay, and then came back. And then it turned out she started a YouTube channel where it's like, oh yeah, it was fake, she was always going to buy me the car. We just kind of wanted to.
Well,
Yeah.
That's rough.
Thomas,
Well, and that
it wasn't on Dr. Phil, but I remember seeing that someone's parents, I think, got them was it a Bentley or was it a Ferrari? I think it was a Ferrari. Someone's parents got them a red Ferrari, and they were like, I wanted a white one. They crashed the Ferrari so that their parents would get them a white one.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, if I ever found this person.
Right. I mean, that's years of, you want to talk about parenting style and enabling?
Yeah.
They created that. That child wasn't born that way.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about nature versus nurture.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to that. So, moving on from that into self-medication, like, I know a lot of people who stopped taking their meds and instead started taking CBD since it became legal in Ireland. Is that a thing that's happening in the States as well?
Totally happening in the States. And marijuana is legal here in Colorado. So we've got THC and the CBD. And, I can tell you from a mental health perspective, the CBD, I've read a couple of medical journals and some things backed by some science regarding inflammation and anxiety. And it's really cool what it's doing. And I think that there's definitely some promising things happening in the CBD world. The THC world of marijuana, yeah, the self-medicating with it, I don't support it. I don't love it, and here's why. I think it actually induces a stress cycle.
CBD.
So people know THC.
I can't. Oh no, I didn't want to go into an article. Sorry, keep talking. Ignore me. I'm just a guy.
Okay. I think it makes it worse. I think it makes people's anxiety worse. They think it's helping, but I don't buy it. I've seen it. I worked in an emergency department before I went into private practice, and I think what it does is it's kind of like alcohol. It masks the real issue. Yeah. And until you gain some coping skills and some life skills to work through what you're working with, you're just essentially masking the root of the problem. And so that's my concern with it. If you're going to use it recreationally or once in a while, like, great, have at it. But if you're using it to treat something like depression and anxiety, but you're not actually getting to the root of why that's happening in the first place, it's just going to be there when you're not high or you're not drunk or whatever you're doing. And that's the problem.
So would you say CBD is a good thing then?
I've seen good things. Yeah. I've never used it myself, but I've definitely seen way less side effects, and athletes are having good response with it regarding inflammation.
Yeah, nearly every athlete in the UFC is on CBD.
I've been hearing, I've been hearing, what is it? Even ads on the radio now for like CBD companies and everything, and I'm like, what?
Yep.
Like,
there's a lot of stigma to it.
Yeah, it does have a stigma to it, but like, when you read up on it, it's the whole stigma around like marijuana and stuff like that is to do with the THC, because like, oh, it makes people lazy, and they just, all they do is laugh, and they don't have a job and stuff like that. But like, then if you tell them all this stuff about CBD, they're like, yeah, but the THC's still there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the THC stuff is, it's like I said, it's legal here in Colorado. And so there's shops on every corner. And so when I was working at the hospital before I went into private practice, some of my funniest stories are of tourists coming to visit Colorado, and they'd get so excited because marijuana is legal, and they'd get the edibles and they'd eat the whole thing.
Oh God.
And an hour later start freaking out, and they hours.
That's the one thing I hear about edibles, is just that like people are like, they'll take one, if it's like brownie, they'll eat one brownie and they'll be like, I feel nothing.
Yeah.
Darren, you see that?
Thomas, I think that's your mic.
That is probably my mic.
Thomas.
Is it gone? Yes.
Still gone. And we're back.
Yeah, but it's
Darren, you're the type of
It's
guy
like-
that would do that shit.
shut up. Hold on. But it's like they'll eat one, they'll be like, I feel nothing. And then they eat two, like still feel nothing, and
Completely
eat
what
three,
Dara would do.
and then it'll all hit them at once,
Describing
and it's
yourself,
just like,
bro.
Yeah,
oh Jesus.
all at once,
You're
and
just
then
describing yourself, man. Come on, stop that.
I know Joey Diaz has a story where he took one, and it took him about 3 hours for it to do anything.
Yeah. They say, I think they say, don't quote me on this, but they say you're supposed to dose at 5 milligrams every hour. And so you're supposed to take 5 and wait.
He took 1,000 milligram.
Jesus.
He split it in half with another comedian.
Oh, is he alive?
Well,
Surprisingly.
he's alive. Don't if there's much to be said about his brain at the moment.
Don't know if he's there, but he's alive.
Joey Diaz.
Yeah.
Kind of just shows up and just like, yeah, it's me, that guy. Oh.
He's kind of funny though.
Oh, he's hilarious.
But,
Was he on the Rogan show? I'm not sure.
he's been on it like twice
Yeah,
or three
he's been on
times,
it
right?
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
times.
no, yeah, he did.
They're lifelong friends.
Look, I'm not seeing that right there. It's like a fresh clip of the two of them. Egypt. Go on.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Cardiologist once, and it was like toward the end of my shift when I was at the hospital, and basically his wife dropped him off and said, I can't deal with it. Same deal. He wanted to see what it was like, didn't feel anything, took more. The hospital at 5:00 that night and showed up at 6:30 the next morning for my next shift, and he was still asleep in the emergency room. So, I mean, they're powerful.
Must have been one crazy dream.
Oh my God, right?
Imagine he just dreamt he was at work for the whole thing and he woke up and he was like, great shift, everybody. Thanks for coming. Great stage. Like, hey, I like what you did on that surgery. You were great. Hey, give this guy a raise. Am I right, everyone? You know.
Let's get a round of applause for this guy. And he wakes up, he's like, where am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. Definitely.
Mhm.
But obviously there's people who self-medicate with stuff other than CBD.
Oh yeah.
In the US, would you, or what would, with what you've experienced, what would be the most common? Alcohol.
I think alcohol, heroin's on the rise. States, unfortunately. But in my experience living out here on the West Coast, it's alcohol. I see a lot of alcoholics who start just because they're numbing, and it's better to kind of numb out and be the life of the party, or just feel nothing. And then before they know it, their body's addicted to alcohol. And it's one of the nastiest withdrawals when they decide they want to stop and your body goes into withdrawal. It's tough. It's terrible. I mean, I've seen people in the hospital for weeks coming off alcohol. And it's easily accessible here in the States. I mean, you buy it everywhere. There's a liquor store on every corner, and it's legal. So I think that, and that's the nastiest one for me in what I've treated and experienced. And the saddest one is alcohol.
We're Irish, and we know a fair bit about the drink.
We can vouch for that.
That has definitely been a problem here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? It's honestly like it's the most easily accessed.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Because people can go into pharmacies and then you have to get a prescription for certain things, but then you walk into a shop, as long as you have your ID, you're pretty much sorted. Like you can get it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Many people,
And it goes so many different percentages for whatever. So if someone wants to get blackout, oh yeah, they go for whiskey and drink the entire bottle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For anyone Irish, drinkaware.ie is a great resource.
Yeah.
If you're looking to stop drinking.
Yeah.
I know right now during COVID, it's very tempting, but don't.
Sure.
I know myself. I've gone through it as well. So have the lads. Stay away from it as much as you can.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can have a drink every so often now, for if you're out with friends, but
for sure.
Did you guys ever see that Sweden
don't
drug
go to.
campaign? Where
No.
they have control.
where they've legalized everything.
Yeah,
I
they
think.
do it in safe environments. So it's like, you probably can't read it, but it's like Sophie did not die when she tried LSD. She'd had the substance tested and knew it was contained. John did not die when he overdosed on heroin. He was not alone, and his friends had Naxaline. Is that what's Naxalone?
Nar-
Naxolone? Oh, no.
Narcan to give for
Okay.
Yeah,
Then-
their whole thing is like that. I think they've legalized everything in like controlled environments, and then they're just like, fuck it. Like, if you wanna go and do that, do it. But like, here's a help center if
See
you
that
want to get off of it.
bottom left one,
Yeah.
MDMA.
MDMA.
That was legal in Ireland
think-
for
aren't
one
there-
day, pretty recently. Like,
Oh, in
3 years ago?
20 was it 2015? Yeah, one.
2015.
And I think all
5 years ago.
I think all class 1 drugs were legal
really.
for that
I'm
day.
not too
So
sure
it
with
was-
that.
I think
but that
it
was
was
definitely legal.
only
No, it was I swear to God, it was like MDMA. It was acid. I think there was a lot.
Obviously, don't do it.
Yeah, like
You don't
Yeah.
need me to tell you that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you don't need shit like that to have fun.
God, yeah.
Yeah. No, and well, and I think with the drinking thing, it's so socially acceptable. It's
Yeah.
like like we go skiing and you stop for a drink and it's just so easy and accessible. And there's people, and I want to say it's California. Have you guys heard about the microdosing retreats with acid?
Yes.
The what?
Yeah. So they're
People take small amounts.
and they're making it like a controlled environment. So it's allegedly supposed to open your mind and help you deal with past trauma or addiction or different things that you've been struggling with. It's supposed to open your mind, and they do it in a structured environment, and they microdose you.
That is much better than getting it illegally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's like
Especially at
Mhm.
Like, thing with,
festivals.
LSD and MDMA and stuff. Like, you get it out. If you just go out in town and just get it, you don't know what's in it. You don't know where it's coming from. Like, it could be laced with anything.
Exactly. It's not like the heydays of the Grateful Dead, in the 60s, 70s. It's much different now.
And also
Much-
in festivals and stuff. Because when you go to a festival,
Oh, yeah,
people bring the worst type of drugs. Like, they bring over the leftovers of their leftovers
Like,
and mix them all
people
together.
just-
And,
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
people die at festivals in Ireland every year?
oh, not too many.
Ugh.
I mean, I know the big thing with, like, in California with Coachella is, like, Molly. Everyone does it. Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
just like, ugh.
I know.
That can't be
Here.
good.
It's scary. I've seen I've seen a lot of it in the emergency department. I could tell stories for hours about some of the ridiculous things I've seen. And it's just crazy to me what I understand being curious, and I get it. And I'm certainly not one to judge, but the question I always ask is, you've got to ask yourself what's worth it. Like, why are you putting yourself in high risk situations?
Yeah.
With potential deadly consequences. And so that's the scary part for me is I don't think I could ever chill out enough to do it. I'd be scared the whole time.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
thing though, like if like with these kind of controlled environments and stuff like that, they could have it like purely produced
Mm-hmm.
and like, there's no bad things in it. Like, exactly what's in it, they tell you and everything like that. And you just
Yeah.
try it like one time. That
Yeah.
would be like smart, I think, even.
Then yeah, I guess I started, and I can't think of the name. Reading a book about Germans in World War II, and how meth was actually legal at first, like way back pre-World War II, and then when they realized that they were going to be fighting this war and up, all hours and the whole 9 yards, basically the Nazis were high on meth the whole time.
What?
Yeah, that's how they went
Yeah.
through the. That's how they took over France so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard about this thing the other
And
day.
you can see how the war went on. It was like they just crashed over time.
Yep,
How
exactly.
at the start they
That is-
were unbeatable, and then they
fucking
crashed.
insane.
It's
Well, I mean,
insane.
it doesn't really surprise me because Coca-Cola started out with cocaine in it, so
Yep.
as a medicine.
Yeah. And
Just
it was
did it about their gun.
I for the article I was reading, but they were selling it in the pharmacies before they knew that it was bad and should be illegal. but it was more
Yeah.
socially acceptable than drinking back in
Yeah.
that time. So people were using that to cope with the loss of World War I, is how it started over in Germany, I'm pretty sure. And then they realized they could give it to the troops and they could stay up all night.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's rough.
You guys hear
Yeah.
about this when the English, instead of dropping bombs or anything over Germany, they dropped this thing, or wherever they were at the time, they dropped this like how to get out of, like, pretend to be sick to get out of duty, because not a lot of them
Really?
wanted to be there. And so a lot of them started then pretending to be sick. And when they realized this, they stopped sending people home. But then people actually got sick, were told to get back in there, got everyone else sick. I completely fucked them up.
Yeah. It
Rough.
was weird times. It was, yeah,
I
interesting.
mean, it's weird. Like, I know, what is it? They've started to look into treating PTSD with mushrooms, I think.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit weird, but like if they actually study it and see if it actually helps, I think,
Mhm.
obviously
Oh fuck
it,
yeah.
it'd be incredible. Like,
Right. Especially for our
so
people that really struggle with intense PTSD.
yeah,
That's tough stuff to work through. And that's the understatement of the century. That's, so anything that could help that, I'm in full support of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, with like the amount of shit that's happened in the last 50 years and like just people surviving it and all, like even like just veterans going to war and seeing like people you've known for years just get
Yeah, we had
blown
a
up
veteran
or
on
like
yesterday.
gone in an instant. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
that's not gonna do anything for your mental health. Like,
No. And
it's
those are
horrible.
the things that you can't avoid. And when you try to, they come up when you least expect them. That's why it's so important with any kind of trauma, intense trauma, to acknowledge that happened and attempt to work through it, because that stuff creeps in when you least expect it. And it's definitely not something you want to avoid. And it's probably some of the toughest work people will ever do.
Yeah.
I think we underestimate that a lot, especially with our soldiers coming home.
Yeah, that's a big
Yeah.
thing with you guys. You got a lot of people in the armed forces compared to the rest of the world. We
Yeah.
have a very small defense force. Lads, Thomas, can you check how much it is? I think it's like 7,000 to 14,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not that much at all.
And we've never been involved in armed conflict. Whereas you
Yeah, we're
guys
completely neutral.
are
Like, we
involved a lot.
still have prop planes. We don't even use jets. So like,
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a
yeah,
biplane
if
at some
that
point.
tells you anything.
Yeah.
That's Australia.
Why did you get the Australian one?
I didn't mean to do that.
Hold on, Damas.
We're not in Australia. Isn't this the awfully Australian project? What? What the fuck? No.
Wait.
The reserve.
Active personnel. That's 8,751.
Okay.
Jeez.
Take us over
Reserves is
like that. But
We've currently 8,550 active personnel in the Defence Force.
I think that military age is wrong. You can join at 17.
Yeah, you can.
17, you guys can?
I
Yes.
think it's the reserves you can join at 17, is it not?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think you can actually go into the proper like defense forces at 17. It has to be reserves.
Okay.
And then from reserves you can go into defense forces.
Yeah, we have obviously a pretty robust military over here, and I would say a not nearly robust system in place to help them all.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend was in the Air Force, and so he's got a really close group of friends that we see all the time. And just hearing them talk about trying to get into a therapist at the VA or a doctor at the VA, it's I'm thankful every day they're as well adjusted as they are, because they're some of the best guys I've ever met. And I just think, I'm thankful every day that they're good, because I know that a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
That's the thing about like veteran meetings and stuff, because there's some difference between like talking to someone who's been through the same things you have, and like talking to a civilian in that case, you know, because like all we see is like kind of newsreels and movies and stuff like that, but like they experience it firsthand. So I think those, like, when there's more kind of veteran meetings, it's very helpful. Like,
and that is actually such a brilliant point, because, and I'll out my boyfriend here for a second. He was looking at getting some counseling, and I had a couple in the area that I really wanted him to see, because the VA was taking forever to get in place. And I'm like, you just need to go talk to somebody. And he finally said to me, but they won't understand what I'm talking about. I need somebody who gets it. And it was in that moment where I thought, oh my God, how could I have missed that?
Yeah.
No, it was worth the wait for him just to be around people that got it. And he worked with a couple of veterans at work now. He's at the hospital, and just that camaraderie and that connection that they have, which really, to bring it full circle, when we talk about talking about your problems and talking about problems with your friends, building that connection with somebody that's either been there or can understand you is just invaluable. So,
yeah, the thing, and it spans across ages, because I know I've seen a video of Thomas, if you can pull it up there quick. It's a UK World War II veteran talking to a current kind of UK military man, and just the World War II. He's just like, he looks at me, he's like, "You've been through a lot, son," and he's just like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I think that guy went to Afghanistan.
They can just tell.
You guys hear about that Tom Moore
Yeah,
guy?
I think so, yeah.
That guy's so cool. He did like 100
No,
laps in
there's
his backyard. Reached
Yeah.
38 million for the
Look up,
NHS.
yeah, just look up
Old versus new British military.
yeah, that's it. That's the one.
mm,
But yeah, just seeing the way, like, that's how many years in the difference? Like, World War II was like 8 years ago. And
Yeah.
like, it's insane. Just to see that they can talk about something that happened so far apart.
It's called Old Soldier Meets Young Soldier. It's made by The Gap.
There we go. Yeah, The Gap. There it is. Yeah, that video it hits hard.
Yeah, it's almost a beautiful connection. Yeah, they're amazing men and women, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to live in a world where we didn't need them to do what they do, but we don't live in that world yet.
And like, it's very hard as well, because I know, even like watching movies, what happened. You guys know who Chris Kyle is, right?
Yeah.
No, sir.
American Sniper.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh man, that movie's so sad.
That's an incredible movie, by the way. I haven't got the chance to read the book yet, but yeah, sadly killed by his by a fellow veteran
Somebody
who was suffering from PTSD. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That dude.
And it just shows you that it doesn't go away.
No, it's something you have to. I think you have to face, but I think the biggest thing that I've learned just with my friends that are veterans, and I do some work with some veterans in my practice, they've got to get to a place where they're ready. And I think more so than ready, they need to feel safe. Yeah. And it's a really hard jump for them to make, to realize that maybe they do need to work through something. And that's a really difficult thing, because they're so used to protecting and being on point and carrying out a job, that to really think that maybe they need some help, I think that's a tough thing to wrap their heads around. And so I think, a safe environment, but yeah, they've got to be ready too. It's tough. It's tough.
It is, yeah. Boys, you talked to Damien Tomlinson. I wasn't there for that, but did he speak on?
Damien Tomlinson is an Australian veteran who,
you want to look him up there?
Lost both his legs in Afghanistan.
Wasn't it an IED?
He was sitting on the right side of the car, and just underneath him was the IED, and he doesn't remember the rest. He remembers afterwards.
Yeah.
Amazing guy.
Awesome dude.
Great to talk to him. He was in, what was it, Australian Survivor?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he is a huge player in golf in Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like one of the
He-
best
What a recovery
He,
story! Like,
he said something about he has the highest
handicap.
handicap in Australian golf.
wait, shit, really?
But
Yeah.
he wishes he didn't have it because he could do it without it.
Really?
He's just really good.
Good for him.
Yeah, he was a great guy to have on. Amazing guy.
Yeah, he was
Mm.
awesome.
Unfortunately,
Been through hell and back and came out the other side. You know?
Yeah. An amazing spirit. And I think
it's
that's-
motivational to look at. Like, sorry, no.
no, I was just gonna say that's what amazes me about our veterans is that their spirit and their loyalty is just second to none. So,
Yeah.
It's something I feel honored to get to know any of them. So I'm proud of my boyfriend every day. And my sister was in the Army, and my brother-in-law was a pilot. So yeah, lots of pride over here.
I guess moving on from self-medication and
Yeah.
self-diagnosis, I want to talk as well about nature versus nurture when it comes to mental illness.
Yeah.
So, in your
Right.
opinion, which one is going to cause it more often?
Well, so there are some mental illness, there's the genetic component too.
Yeah.
So if we've got somebody that we're looking at that maybe is having their first psychotic break, bipolar, schizophrenia, even depression, one of the first questions we always ask is, does this run in your family? And 9 times out of 10, you'll say, well, yeah. They'll say my grandmother, my grandfather, my mother. It's there. We know there's a genetic component to it. Whether or not that gene expresses, right, and they have a psychotic break, that's a lot more science and well above my pay grade. But regarding nature versus nurture, when it comes to things like anxiety and depression and those types of more generalized terms, I think how parents support that child as they grow up with it definitely tends to lend itself toward how they manage it as they're older. And I do think that matters. I do think that having a supportive environment, having an environment where it's not pushed under the rug or it's like a stigma and we don't talk about it, that matters. And I see that a lot with, well, you're not depressed, you're just having a bad day. And these kids are crying out for help and they're depressed. And it's a real thing. And so, yeah, I think that matters. And I think that it can make it worse if they're dismissed and brushed under the rug like they don't matter. That causes way more problems down the road based on how they manage it. And so, I think in general, nurture's a big deal. And when we talk about like the kid with the Ferrari, and the kids aren't born like that. Kids are parented to be that way. And a lot of times how we get our needs met as children, it works for us. And then it isn't until we're older that we're like, this isn't working anymore. This isn't working in my adult relationships. And that's when people start to take a look at their childhoods and say, what isn't working? But back to the genetic component. Yeah, we definitely know there's a genetic component. There's a genetic predisposition to alcoholism. So I always tell parents, if there's alcoholism in their family, you've got to have conversations with your kids to let them know they may be more predisposed. So they need to be careful about their relationship with alcohol and drugs.
I didn't know about that. I've been told before that was a complete myth.
Yeah. Nope.
But not by an expert, obviously.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
What's that?
Could you tell us a little bit about this predisposition to alcoholism?
Yeah, so we know that there's a genetic component, and when you look back through families and generations, a lot of times you'll see a really long line of alcoholics, and it'll be great grandpa was, but nobody really admitted it. And so there is a gene that, when I say a genetic predisposition, for whatever reason, some people are more predisposed to having that addictive personality, or when they start to drink the alcohol, their body reacts or processes that differently. And so there is a predisposition to it. That being said, people without a disposition to it can still become alcoholics. But people with that genetic history or that family history of it are much more likely, unfortunately, to succumb to that addiction. And so it's certainly something that I think that we need to talk to kids about, because it's a very real thing. Why that gene expresses and why they're just predisposed to, I can't really speak on. But it's pretty interesting stuff. And like I said, a lot of times if you look back on the family history, it goes all the way back. And so, yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of.
Sorry, now this is probably a bit of a stupid question, but
Not at all.
if someone was to, like, say they weren't genetically predisposed to be to alcoholism,
Yep.
and they just became an alcoholic, would somewhere down the line of like that generation, could there be a genetic predisposition for it?
Oh my God, that's an awesome question. That's super interesting to think about. And to be quite honest, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that, but that's an interesting question.
I mean, it has to start somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
that's what I was thinking. I was just like,
like when the first monkey got drunk, and then years later, here we are.
Right.
I think, cavemen are killing each other, and now we're doing
So
podcasts.
yeah, imagine.
I mean, we still have parts of that. I mean, UFC is kind of combat
The
sports.
UFC heavyweight division is the closest there is to gladiators these days.
Yeah.
All they need is those big sticks.
Yeah,
Literally.
spears.
Give us Jesus,
It's
man.
just pure insanity.
Shook a lion in there.
Please don't do that.
Oh, well done. You won the fight. Okay, bring out the rhinoceros.
after a 6-round fight, bringing the rhinoceros afterwards.
Yeah, like leaning on the knees, just, and then you just hear the fucking footsteps of this rhinoceros just coming into the ring. You're like, come on, man.
Dana White with a massive horn, a battle cry.
Dana White would be
Bring in
arrested
the rhinoceros
and put in jail forever.
Yeah, but could you imagine the
last
scene?
He's gonna resign as UFC president.
Okay, so we got about 8 minutes left.
Just fucking
so
call in the rhinoceros.
while we're on the topic of the UFC,
Yes.
brain damage from fighting.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to talk to anyone or talked with someone who's had an issue like this?
Not from fighting per se. We have a lot of alpine athletes out here, skiing and snowboarding, and people with traumatic brain injuries. And yeah, that is extremely unfortunate. So a lot of times we'll see like impulsivity control stuff. They'll have a hard time controlling their impulses. They have a hard time with emotions and regulating their emotions. They can. Parkinson's disease tends to be more prevalent in them. I think Muhammad Ali had Parkinson's, didn't he?
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
in his last fight, he had the beginnings of it, and he still fought.
Yes.
And he got beaten pretty bad. It was very
Yeah.
sad.
Well, yeah.
That's a terrible disease.
Did you ever see that video of him and Mike Tyson? Like a couple years down the line, Mike's in his. He's like mimicking his there's the shuffle he did, and Ali just looks old, I guess.
Yeah, near the end of his life, he kind of looked like he wasn't there, which was
Yeah.
really upsetting.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the, if not the biggest boxer of all time.
Oh, he's the greatest.
Yeah.
That's
And
why
you have
it's
to
funny.
In
wonder,
every
like, what
gym,
part of that
in every
was
single like boxing
fighting.
gym you go to, that quote is plastered everywhere, and his face is everywhere.
Yeah.
Sean O'Malley has it tattooed onto his side. Yeah.
As much as he's an asshole, Sean O'Malley, I mean, that's a
Gee.
good tattoo to have.
Yeah. Well, and with Parkinson's disease, you typically get a type of dementia called Lewy body dementia. So a lot of times when you say like he looks there, it's a progressive disease, and the dementia is which leads to cognitive changes and behavioral changes. So a lot of times those guys have a really hard time with impulse control too, which is why that disease is just so just terrible, because who he was when he was young, a lot of times your brain takes over because it's sick, and they do things that may seem out of character or impulsive, and it's just not who they are. Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's sad.
I still remember the morning that happened. I was actually at Thomas's, and the next morning they were talking about how he had a fight in Ireland one time, and they built the ring. They didn't have like a training gym around here or anything, but he was around here, and he trained in Edenderry, and they built the ring in Road Power Station, which is
Does the
just up the
Edenderry
road.
boxing club still use that?
What, that ring?
I know the guy. I know the guy who.
I mean, they'd probably like. I mean, that'd be a thing they'd want to keep, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Like that would be a huge part of history. To be like, oh yeah, see this ring? You know, Muhammad Ali trained in this ring.
For context, our town is void of history.
Yeah, we have pretty much.
You know, history in Ireland begins basically when the British left, because a lot of it was like not documented beforehand and destroyed, like Thomas said.
Yeah,
so our history begins. Oh, you have our history from like 1,000 years ago, and then it jumps to 100 years ago. Everything between is gone.
You have like it goes back to like kind of Iron Age and stuff when they were like cooking things in like holes in the ground, and then it goes from that to like
with the Irish High Kings.
Yeah.
What's the name of that? Is it Fulloch Fia?
I wouldn't be too sure.
I think it is, but then it goes from there to like shut the fuck up. but it goes from there to like Catholic people teaching in like hedge schools because they didn't want to get caught by the British.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of history that's being questioned right now. It's an interesting time over here.
Oh yeah, you guys are having good fun.
You guys are having it rougher than anyone else.
We're having a rip-roaring good time. No.
Yeah.
No.
Hope.
Thankfully, with us, it's a bit more clear cut.
Yeah. We know who to hate.
Exactly.
God.
I'm not going to name them by name, but
I mean,
sure you,
all right,
you know who you are, and if they were still alive, we'd be asking.
Listen. Okay. We love the current British people, but we have to admit that
Colonial
Britain has.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Britain has fucked over so many countries. Just think about it. You got us. You got you guys. You got
Australia.
India. You got Australia. You got a lot of Africa.
Yeah.
They've gotten everywhere.
They took that part of Spain, Gibraltar, the Falklands and Argentina.
Malta.
They own land everywhere. They made an entire country a huge, massive country, which one state of that country is 36 times the size of our entire country, and they just said, hey, here's a big landmass, how about we make it a prison? They sent Irish people, they sent Scottish people, they sent English people, Welsh people, and now
here we are.
Australia.
We're all getting better. You know what?
We are.
Yes.
Our four fathers and mothers weren't the best, but here
we don't hold it against current British people.
No. Yeah.
Maybe the Queen.
Jesus, Dara. You can't say that.
Dara.
Dara. This is not the first time he said something about the Queen. He once said he'd shit in the throne room if there was no one else on the earth.
Anyway, we have to finish up real quick, but I want to ask one more thing. With athletes, what is something that would be really common among them if they come in to talk to you?
With, I'm sorry, athletes, did you say?
Yeah, of all kinds.
Of all kinds. Broad question. I have seen a lot of younger athletes, a lot of pressure, which turns into anxiety and a lot of form. I will say something that I'm seeing more and more of are athletes that retire and their bodies start to go back to like normal human bodies, and they have body dysmorphia and they're bulimic and anorexic because their identity is so wrapped up in being strong and athletic when they're not training every single day, they don't know how to like quote kind of just be normal. So I have been actually seeing more and more of that as well. A lot of pressure to perform. And I think a lot of their self-worth is wrapped up in whether or not they can compete and perform. So when they don't have that to attach their worth to, they don't really know who they are. And
I wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah, that's been a big deal.
That's very obvious with ones when they get older, like Schwarzenegger and some old UFC fighters.
I mean, you can't even say that about Mike Tyson because he's just kept the same type of body.
Yeah, he's been the same. Or Sylvester Stallone, he stayed the same.
There you go.
He's like
even
70
Arnold
something.
Schwarzenegger, he's still ripped.
Have you seen him recently?
No.
I mean, he'd still kill you.
He would. Okay, so I learned a lot today.
Good.
I'm sure you guys
Learned
did
a lot
too.
today, trust
Thank
me.
you so much for getting on. I'm sorry I
Thank
picked your brain so much.
No, I love it. Are you kidding? This was awesome. I appreciate you guys. I love what you're doing.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I definitely enjoyed having you on. But if people want to go and check you out after this podcast, where can they find you?
So the name of the podcast is What's Next with Lisa Scott, and I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and I think coming soon to Amazon, actually.
That's really cool.
And I'm also on Instagram at What's Next with Lisa, and I put a lot of show topics up there. And then people can always email me too if they're struggling with something and there I am. I just see a picture of me in the left bottom hand. And they can email me at what'snextwithlisa@gmail.com. So pretty easy to find.
And how many episodes in are you so far?
Oh gosh, I think I'm only on 28. You guys have me beat by a long shot.
We're a daily podcast.
We
so.
upload daily.
You guys go daily? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I've got one coming up next. I'm going to be doing an episode on values. I've found that a lot of times I'll ask people, what's your value system? What do you need? What's important to you? And they just look at me with blank stare. I have no idea what I need. And so we're going to dial it back and kind of simplify that down and talk about self-identity and establishing a value system that feels good. So you're not making choices based on fear and avoidance.
Yeah.
That's coming up next.
So after this conversation, I'm now a huge fan, by the way.
Yes.
So I'm going to be checking out your podcast, definitely.
Me too, yeah.
I don't say that very often, the podcasters. But definitely I'm going to be checking out because this stuff is very relevant and
Yes.
I love talking about it on the show. I like to be more educated on the topics too.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And if you guys have an idea for a show or something you want to learn more about, let me know. I'm around. I'd love to do it.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Cool.
Right. Well,
Lisa.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ryan.
Guys, there's going to be links in the description to go check out Lisa's podcast. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Have
Make
fun.
sure you
It's been a
like,
pleasure.
You too.
Have a
Bye
great
now.
day.
subscribe, comment, tell your grandma about the podcast, and take your handy.
Good luck.